Hey guys, I'm Jeremy and you're watching WIP Miniatures. So I decided to do the very first episode of WIP Miniatures as more of an introductory episode to talk a bit about myself and the hobby, and also what the show and the direction of the show would be sort of going forward. So I've just recently sort of come back into the hobby. Kind of been a big fan of sort of, role-playing games and miniatures and that sort of stuff for a really long time, even since I was quite young. However, as you know, life gets in the way and you don't kind of get a chance to do these things. So as I've gotten a bit older and sort of recently in the last sort of 3 to 4 years, gotten back into the hobby, back into the miniature painting and sort of experiencing the hobby as a new again. So I suppose from there, I wanted to kind of push my social presence. I already had an established Instagram account, so I was already posting bits and pieces on there and following local, sort of well-known miniature artists on that. But I didn't want to get into doing a YouTube channel, partly because YouTube, to my sort of understanding at the time and how I feel about it even to a certain extent now, is quite saturated. There are a lot of people doing hobby painting videos, hobby hack videos, teaching people how to paint, all that kind of sort of stuff. And I didn't want to kind of put myself in a position where I was kind of having to compete with that kind of content. So I made the decision sort of probably the middle of last year to kind of push my social presence a bit more and go onto TikTok, which, at the time TikTok's a bit more used for people to do silly dances and kind of, cooking videos and talk about random sort of crap. And so I decided to use that more to kind of push myself as a hobbyist, so show some of the miniatures that I've been painting and sort of the content I've been creating, and kind of just be part of that hobby scene and sort of, the collective on TikTok that sort of represents that. It was at the end of last year that I kind of decided to make the leap into doing some content and sort of putting that stuff on YouTube. And initially at the time I was deciding to do a hobby blog video, one of those kind of talking about my sort of hobby or the journey through the hobby. And ideally WIP Miniatures is exactly that too. It's definitely a journey through the hobby, but more from a, as we all kind of know, WIP, a work in progress. And that's kind of how I see my journey through the hobby. Initially I was looking at doing it very hobby diary, video blog kind of stuff. And there's a lot of that on there at the moment. There's quite a few hobbyists doing a similar thing. And I felt at that time when I was kind of doing that, it was a really good idea to kind of follow a similar suit, because it's already a niche that's established. There's already people doing stuff in it. It wasn't until probably December, kind of after catching up with a friend of mine, that I kind of got into a bit of a conundrum, I suppose, that, what did I want to do with the hobby channel? I just entered the local painting competition here in New Zealand called the Bamboo Brush, and quite furiously sort of started painting a miniature. This one here, actually, funnily enough. Furiously painting for the competition and trying to get that sorted. It was about maybe halfway through it, because the competition gives you roughly about 3 months to paint it, that I kind of got that I'm over it feeling. Most people who probably are miniature painters know that feeling. That's that hobby blues, burnout, or maybe just procrastination. You don't want to get into it, or you don't want to finish it off. And that's kind of when I came up with, I suppose, looking at it, the whole idea of that, actually this is a big work in progress. As a hobbyist, going through the process of building miniatures and painting them, and that whole journey as a and that journey as a whole was really a work in progress for me. And that's kind of where I decided to kind of call the show work in progress miniatures, or WIP Miniatures, where we would look at building, painting and creating miniatures, looking at things like kit bashing and conversions and other sort of shenanigans, where there was a kind of focal point each episode that kind of tackles different sort of bits and pieces. So that's kind of where I am now, where I've kind of, done the bits I've needed to do. I've finished up, obviously, the miniature that I've just shown you. submitted that for the competition, and now I get a chance to kind of actually focus on what I wanted to do. And that was kind of what was holding me back a little bit. You know, I want to do building, painting, showing people my miniatures. I didn't kind of really want to do the competition piece. And I felt a little bit remiss that I didn't push myself a little bit harder, partly because, you know, I think this is one of those things that a lot of hobbyists do go through. And so in turn, I needed to take a little bit of a step back and look at what I wanted to achieve. I looked at it and said, okay, if I can complete this miniature and get this done and move on, I can actually do what I want to do. Because there's a lot of things I'd like to actually be able to do and explore further in the hobby. And I felt this was a bit of a good stepping stone into it. So, yeah, let's see. WIP Miniatures. So WIP Miniatures, or Work in Progress Miniatures, is exactly that. It's work in progress. So each episode is kind of broken into a couple of different parts. We sort of start off with a project. I'll start off with a project and basically build it on camera, and then the next part will be me painting it. It'll show kind of how I suppose show my thought process when I'm building and painting a miniature, what I'm trying to achieve from that end result. By no means is it a hobby hack video or teaching people how to paint. That's definitely not what my videos are about. Partly because I paint with oil paints. I don't actually paint with acrylics, so it's a little bit tricky to kind of say, oh, well, actually, if you were to do this with acrylics, this is the effect you would get, because it's a little bit different when you're using oil paints. And so I didn't want to kind of go down that avenue. I just really want to say, hey, this is me. Here's my hobby journey. This is what I'm doing. You know, if you want to enjoy it and follow me, join me on the journey, that's fantastic. But, you know, hey, there's lots of other content that you can watch as well. So I suppose to kind of conclude this video and to sort of start that WIP Miniatures journey, I will be looking at putting out episodes, ideally 1 to 2 episodes a month, if not more. Each episode, as I said, will be kind of looking at building and painting miniatures from, interestingly enough, because I'm a big Warhammer fan, from that sort of Warhammer IP. So not just Warhammer 40k, but we are looking at things like Age of Sigmar, Old World, Blood Bowl, Necromunda, so any of that kind of IP and content that they put out. The first few episodes are actually going to be sort of the kit bashing conversion episodes, where we'll be looking at looking and using some of the conversion kits that have been released by Grey Tide Miniatures, because of the versatility of those kits. I wanted to sort of see exactly how versatile they were. So we'll be building a miniatures just using intercessor parts from the last lot of sort of additions, the Dominus Crusade and the sort of recent Leviathan Crusade box sets. We're using intercessor parts from that, as well as in conjunction using the Grey Tide miniature parts and seeing what we can kind of put together. So that's kind of, I suppose, where I am and where I'm going with the show. Obviously, I'm open to feedback, and if anybody has any questions about the content I'm creating or the show that I'm creating, I really look forward to hearing from you. But yeah, you can definitely contact me on my social media. I do have a social media, which is at Flannelhammer40k on both Instagram and TikTok, as well as I'll have the contact details. You can comment on my video. But until then, take care, and we'll see you guys shortly.